camera here and go from there. So, welcome to the Valentines astrology presentation. I hope you're all at least leave feeling in love today, at least within yourself. So that's the start. So I'm Altazar, and for those who are not aware, I've handed out this brochure which indicates my website, www.altazarastrology.com, where all of the different kinds of readings I do are listed. But on this specific brochure, I'm listing relationship-related astrology readings. So that's where there's a focus, because astrology has many topics. We can focus on your life purpose, your career possibilities, the timing of events in your life, which is a horoscope. We can focus on the spiritual healing issues. But today we're focusing on love and relationships. And so, as well, for additional insight about relationships and spiritual healing associated with astrology, I have a YouTube channel that you can go to where I have 17 videos. And that YouTube channel is just simply Altazar Astrology. So if you go to YouTube and do a search, and under Altazar space astrology, there are 17 videos there. So what we're going to do today is summarized by this following outline. So I'm going to first talk about spiritual astrology. What is the kind of astrology that I practice versus media astrology, pop astrology, astrology that's related to horoscopes and magazines or newspapers. Then we're going to get into what is love. So, the premise here is we're looking at relationships and the meaning of love and how that may be encountered or experienced in your life and in terms of astrology. So we're going to look at what the meaning of love is from a spiritual point of view and from the more romantic point of view, and also look at the signs of people here today for those who want to have some feedback about your own sun signs. We're not going to get too technical here today, but I am going to go briefly into talking about how spiritual astrology helps people understand their relationships, their marriage, their relationship with their children, relationships with their friends. So we'll look briefly at relationship compatibility astrology. And I'll be using the charts of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton as examples of that. Then the brochure indicates types of readings, and one of those readings is called an ideal mate profile. So that's a popular reading that I do for clients over the course of 30 years of my experience to help them see, specifically from their astrology chart, who they would be most compatible with and why, by virtue of their astrology, and also who they would have real serious challenges or difficulties with. So that's what an ideal mate profile is. And then we'll also look at what the signs are for people here in the audience, and I'll give you kind of a brief glimpse from what you tell me about yourself, what signs your ideal mate profile might have. So that will be concluding with that perspective. So with that said, I'm going to, being a water sign, I'm going to
good idea.
Load up here a little bit. And I do want to point out that this is actually on Facebook Live at the moment, so those of my Facebook friends and clients are welcome to the presentation. So, starting out with, many of you have been at some of my presentations already, and I've talked about what spiritual astrology is. I've been an astrologer for almost 30 years now, and my background includes Vedic astrology, Chinese astrology, Buddhist perspective on karma and reincarnation, as well as Western metaphysics through Aristotle, Nostradamus, Carl Jung, and Western psychology. So this point of view, spiritual astrology differs from Western media commercial astrology in the sense that we're not just looking at the personality characteristics of your sun sign. So if you're a Taurus, it might describe it as someone who is business-oriented, materialistic, determined, and assertive for their material security. But we're going to go beyond looking at just those issues to see what spiritual astrology really is about and how it's connected to love and loving relationships. So, in essence, the astrology has evolved over 5,000 years. And the point has been initially, from a spiritual point of view, to help people understand the significance of their soul growth. So astrology has been just one of a variety of spiritual growth tools to help people better understand why they are here in this body, in this life, and what they are here to share in terms of gifts and talents, as well as, and eventually a kind of service to the world, but also what they're here to heal in terms of their own personal growth and soul growth. So from this point of view, the perspective is that life is a school in which our soul is on a continuous evolutionary journey through many lifetimes. Now, people don't have to believe in the reincarnation perspective to hear the facts that are presented on the astrology that they have today, because that should be enough accuracy to at least be a guideline. But from this point of view, the universe is a very loving place. And it gives us many lifetimes in order to evolve our soul to be conscious and aware of the spiritual laws and principles that lend towards more harmony, happiness, peace of mind, prosperity, and loving relationships, as well as health in our life. So during our many lifetimes, we generate what's known as karma. And karma means cause and effect, or we get back what we put out. But that is because that the universe wants us to experience what feels healthy and positive versus what feels negative and might need a change or a course correction. So a person has an astrology chart, and we're going to just bring up Elizabeth Taylor's astrology chart here to give a quick example. A person has an astrology chart that consists of 72 factors. One of those factors is your sun sign. She was a Pisces. Sun in Pisces. So what this chart is meant to be in the context of spiritual astrology is your spiritual report card in the school of life. And so, in essence, a Vedic astrologer or a Western metaphysician who's interpreting out of the Kabbalah is going to be looking at your chart and seeing, well, what is your karma? In other words, through your lifetimes, to what extent has your soul been in alignment with spiritual laws and principles? And as a result, in this lifetime, the symbols will indicate the gifts, talents, and positive attraction to socioeconomic, educational, and relationship resources that you'll have access to as a result of the meritorious positive karma you have generated in prior lifetimes. Now again, you don't have to agree with this point of view to hear how an astrologer might just interpret your chart about who you are in this life. But many people ask the million-dollar question, how can you tell me these things about me? Let's say I've never met you, and I just describe your career, your potential gifts and talents as a musician or an artist or a nurse or a doctor. How can I tell you that just based on your birth date? And also, the chart is symbolic of the configurations that indicate where, either out of ignorance or egoic self-will, you have in many lifetimes been not in alignment with universal principles of love and or an understanding of the interconnectedness of life. And therefore may have blocks, frustrations, or difficulties in this life as a result of what you're here to get out of denial about and embrace the positive antidotes of attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors to heal those issues. And the leading edge of a person's growth in their life, the leading edge of their so-called passion in life, is associated with what you're here to heal in this life. And as a result of embracing those positive approaches to those areas, whether it be dealing with your family, or getting a job and keeping it, or how to handle customers in a business, or how to deal with just constant health problems. Everyone has a unique configuration of issues. For one person, relationships may be their problem. For another person, family, relationships are a piece of cake, but they can't hold a job. They can't seem to make a decent income. So these are all represented in the configuration of a chart. So the point about love is that the extent to which a person comes to know and understand their path in life for personal growth and healing, and embraces the practices and social relations that support that, that will lend towards them experiencing a deeper sense of love within themselves. And as well, love and appreciation from people in their life, because they are evolving a positive vibration related to healing that karma. So that's the foundation of what we're looking at here. Now, so I'm going to give a couple of spiritual definitions of love before we get into looking at relationships. And so we'll go back to the basics. So one of the greatest books that I've ever read that kind of offers a broad sensibility about what is love in terms of relationships. So if we're coming from the premise that the deepest level of experiencing love is to find love within oneself and understand one's relationship to the universe and one's own healing and growth, then according to M. Scott Peck in the book The Road Less Traveled, which the entire book is written around this one statement, that love is the willingness to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's spiritual growth and that of one's partner. Now that's a very profound statement. Now, on the other hand, if we look at, let's say, commercialized media romanticism we see in everything from movies to the billion-dollar cosmetic industry, there, love is about to what extent you can have fun with the other person, maybe share recreational or social activities, movies, restaurants, traveling to Hawaii or whatever, and to what extent you have chemistry so that you have that sexual magnetism and attraction and hopefully have great quality sex to look forward to. And then to a certain extent maybe share material or career ambitions that support the American dream lifestyle. But there's something significantly missing there, and that is, and believe me, I've had clients who've been divorced 3, 4, 5 times. Who am I? Why am I here? And so M. Scott Peck talks about dependency relationship. So if I'm dependent on feeling good by hopefully having sex with my partner tomorrow night after a hard week at work, but I don't really like my job, I'm just in it for the money. You know, there's something off there, because from our fundamental principle of love within, hopefully one is engaged in a career or a business or a service that they have a passion for and they enjoy, such that there's not a magnified intensity for feeling good associated with one's partner, or what can be called neediness. So dependency, according to M. Scott Peck, is the inability to experience wholeness or to function adequately without the certainty that one is being actively cared for by another. Now, nobody's perfect, and you know, I certainly have had my share. There's various levels of how much that's involved. But if we're looking at the extremes of certain idealism, we can see that's a part of it. He says it's okay to have dependency needs, but they don't have to rule your life. So, now this is kind of the foundation roadmap for looking at relationship compatibility in astrology. So, in other words, this is the chronology of the signs. Aries is considered our first sign. It's going to start around March 20th, and then Taurus is followed by Gemini. So every month, a sign goes all the way through Pisces. And right now, we're in the sign Aquarius, and usually in the late January and February, not usually, always, is the sign Aquarius. So, and then we're going to look at some of the basics of relationship compatibility astrology, but before I do that, what I'd like to do is get a sense of what sun signs we have here today for those who want to share. So let's start over here. What is your name and sun sign?
Kim. So Virgo.
Okay. And we have Sapnesh, who is, I know, Pisces. And we have Cynthia, who I know is a Scorpio. Scorpios like to keep things secret, but you know, it's a little out in the open here. Now Laura's in Aries. And we have your name again?
David.
David. And you are?
Capricorn.
Okay. And then we have Russ, who is Leo. And then we have
Sweetie, Sagittarius.
Lynn, a Scorpio.
okay. And we have
Curtis, I'm a Leo.
Barbara, I'm a Libra.
And Fire.
Bar.
Aries. Taurus.
We have
Cherry.
a great representation here, don't we?
Yeah, we have a good range. We have earth, we have water, we have fire, and we have one air sign. Thank you very much. So, our representative. So, now we're going to look at some of the basics of relationship compatibility astrology. So, one fundamental principle is opposites attract. And statistically, when we evaluate long-term relationships or marriages, the majority have at some level, if not sun sign opposites or Venus opposites. So one dynamic that people need to be aware of is that in Western media, or Linda Goodman's sun sign romance perspective, your sun sign is one of three principal factors, or four principal factors that are important in relationship compatibility. I'm going to kind of go back and forth here on this. You see, Elizabeth Taylor is a Pisces. However, the planets that are most significant in terms of connecting with another person are your sun sign, your Venus sign, which may be different than your sun sign. So that's why when people read generalizations about sun sign romance, it can be absolutely inaccurate and bogus. And in fact, when we do a relationship compatibility analysis, which I'm going to give you a sample of, we look at 35 factors to see to what extent two people are compatible or not. And even then, we're not giving people a verdict, divorce or don't date again. All we're going to do is describe how this person approaches their expression of affections, or how they approach their home and family. So we're looking at their sun sign in terms of their identity and soul growth issues. We're looking at their moon position in terms of how they approach their home, family, domestic environment. These are important factors for being in a relationship. How they deal with their own health, diet, certain recreational issues associated with that, and how they have a perspective on their home in terms of family, or whether they may be even more oriented towards career or external activities and are minimal in terms of home or family. So that's the moon. And then we're looking at, so the pivotal factors are the sun, the moon, and Venus. And Venus being the planet of love, it's the planet that symbolizes how one expresses their affections in a relationship, their inclination towards their romanticism. But fundamentally, it also summarizes their values for lifestyle and relationship. Or it summarizes, here, someone with Venus in Aries implies someone who likes a lot of activity, likes recreational dynamics, likes to travel, may be into physical sports or dramatic. In this case, this degree implies drama, like the drama queen Elizabeth Taylor. So that's contrary to someone who's a Pisces. If you read about Pisces, it implies someone who's somewhat reserved, possibly shy, more spiritually inclined, more contemplative and withdrawn. Yet someone with Venus in Aries, she's the one who goes out and asks the guy out for a date. She has a certain masculine, energetic approach to asserting and initiating relationships. So we got to look at the sun sign, the Venus, and the moon. And then, as a further element, Mercury, in terms of how this person communicates on a daily basis, how they schedule their life, what kind of academic or intellectual interests they have. So relationships are very multifaceted this way. And a lot of people aren't aware how much detail an astrology comparison can get into in regards to two people, and to what extent is Elizabeth Taylor looking for someone who is dramatic, dynamic, active, energetic, athletically inclined? Or is she more attached to her moon in Scorpio, which implies she's looking for someone who's interested in intense emotional intimacy and vulnerability? As any coincidence that Richard Burton is a Scorpio. So what is the emphasis? How well does someone know themselves and has discerned their values, as Venus implies the values? Venus in Aries in this position, or your Venus position, is going to imply whether you might want to live in the country or the city, whether you're an urbane type person or you're a rural type person, what are your values for health related to the moon and Venus. You want to be with someone who's health conscious, a non-smoker, into a vegan diet, or don't you care? Or are you looking for someone who's a restaurant connoisseur who likes to go out and try all sorts of foreign foods and different gourmet? So this whole range associated with a person's values, but again, how well is that person aware of their values versus having a certain degree of low self-worth in which they're willing to just chameleon-like adapt to what they think the other person likes and then try to reflect that back to them because they're deluded by, let's say, their sexual attraction or the fact that this person might be very wealthy and can provide them with upward mobility in life. There's lots of tangential egoic bases for why people got in a relationship that is ignoring the deeper heart of their spirituality and the health of their soul. So, what I'm going to do next here is talk a little bit about just a brief example of a relationship compatibility between two people. So we're going to bring up the chart of Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. And so in Richard Burton's chart, we see here that he is a sun sign in Scorpio, which is similar to Elizabeth Taylor's moon in Scorpio. And moon represents more of a feminine energy. Sun represents more of a masculine energy. So that's a compatible natural connection, her being the woman, him being the man. Then we also look at where in Richard Burton's chart are Elizabeth Taylor's planets. So we remember she's a Pisces with her Venus in Aries. So we look over here and we see, you see these wedges, there are 12 what we call houses. So the houses tell us where in life the expression of the planet may exist, or how one may relate to someone else. So for example, the second house is the house of money, business, and finance. The fifth house is the house of romance, arts, creativity, media, children. The seventh house is the house of marriage and partnership and long-term relationships. So, as you've seen in your brochure, is something called the ideal mate profile. If I was discerning an ideal mate profile for Richard Burton, I would say the two most prominent sun signs, if not Venus positions, for you, Richard Burton, are Capricorn, because that's in your house of romance, and there's Capricorn, and his Venus is in Capricorn, and Aquarius or Pisces are in his seventh house, the house of marriage and long-term partnerships. And lo and behold, Elizabeth Taylor is a Pisces in his house of marriage and long-term partnership. So this is how we begin to do the analysis of coming up with a person's ideal mate profile. Now, just to give you a brief sensibility of the complexity involved. So after looking at each of those two astrology charts, we do what's called a comparison compatibility. So in the pink brochure, I have a reading that's called relationship compatibility. And that's where we take your chart and the chart of anyone else, your lover, your spouse, your children, your mother, your father, and we do a breakdown of the harmonious angles between the planets in each of your charts and the tension angles between the planets in each of your charts. So this just to give you a brief sensibility of what goes into looking at a compatibility between two people. So we saw, I gave you the first snippet of their relationship. His sun sign in Scorpio is in a conjunction with her moon in Scorpio. So that's a favorable conjunction. She has a natural emotional empathy. Her approach to her home, family, and domestic environment nurtures and supports his masculine or career identity. Like that. Now, just to take a brief, quick example here of a growth tension issue, and which is why they were divorced twice. They were divorced, then she married someone else, and then divorced him. Elizabeth Taylor was married 10 times, by the way. So, yes. So she's a great example of relationships. So what we see here in terms of the tension growth is that their Mercury positions, Elizabeth's Mercury was in Pisces, and Richard Burton's Mercury is in Sagittarius. And also, Elizabeth Taylor has her Mars right next to her Mercury. So that also forms a tension angle to his Mercury. And Mercury is about how you communicate on a daily basis, how you deal with your schedule, how you deal with deciding what kind of work or business activities you're going to engage in. And this aspect, Mercury-Mars in a square to Mercury, implies two people who could just have explosive arguments over just simple things. Even though they have the romantic planets of Venus, the Sun, and the Moon, those are the pivotal factors we're looking at to see how much there could be a rapport. And certainly relationships are complicated. So the question really is for two people, to what extent do you have enough rapport, playfulness, support of each other's identity, spiritual growth, and well-being to work with the tensions you might have, or the frustrations and difficulties, and how trusting can you be, in other words, to process the differences you might have. So the problem here is that Richard Burton with Mercury in Sagittarius, to do things or decide on things, he needs kind of time and space. He said, well, you want to travel to New York City and maybe look at this project? Well, Elizabeth Taylor with Mercury conjunct Mars says, yeah, well, let's do it tomorrow. Whereas Richard Burton says, I need a few days. And so, like you're not going fast enough, or, there's just this tension that way. So this is an example of the breakdown that we look at in terms of harmony versus growth and tension. And then, so if we take the two charts and we look at each position, Okay. So just to give a kind of brief example, we're looking at, there we go. Okay. So Elizabeth Taylor's moon is at 26 degrees Scorpio, and Richard Burton's moon is at 13 degrees Virgo. So as an additional kind of clarification of this relationship, what we do is we take the midpoint between this moon and that moon, and in fact, every position in the chart, and come up with what we call a composite chart. So, I showed you that her moon was in Scorpio, her moon was in Scorpio, his moon was in Virgo. The midpoint between their two moon positions is 20 degrees Libra. So this entire chart here is called a composite chart, taking every position in each of the other person's chart to find the midpoint and then construct a chart of the relationship itself. And this composite chart gives us a quick snapshot about to what extent these people may be compatible versus having problems. So what we see here, we look at Venus. Venus in Aquarius implies these are two people who need a fair amount of freedom to have social relationships with other people. Not cheating on each other, but just have a life with community, friends, and other people. And it's in a harmonious aspect to the moon, so that implies that they could probably get along quite well living together and enjoy sharing domestic activities as well as social, cultural activities. But then, remember we had that problem with their Mercury, their day-to-day communications. And we see here, if we look at the composite Mercury in Capricorn implies a certain amount of cautiousness and distrust in sharing what's going on with you, or how you feel about things, or what you're planning to do, is a reserve and a cautiousness. But then we see that the Mercury is opposite the planet Pluto, which indicates not only a certain cautiousness and reserve, but even a kind of secretiveness, distrust, and manipulativeness when it comes to planning or organizing activities or discussing business dynamics, and can result in extreme forms of turbulent arguments, and especially arguments that reduce themselves to combative issues related to shared property or material issues. So these are examples of the types of readings that we do that are listed in the brochure. Your relationship compatibility, your ideal mate profile, and your composite chart as a summary of the relationship.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think the more a person deals with their shit and cleans up, whatever karma crap they came with, you would be less prone to these sort of tendencies?
Well, yes, in the sense that if they were both not alcoholics, okay, Richard Burton was, a pretty heavy alcoholic, and Elizabeth Taylor was a pretty regular alcoholic. So if they had a centered spiritual life, they could be, and not as enamored by the egotism of their celebrity and all those things, they could have gotten past the problem by being more patient and understanding of the different style that they have in terms of communicating. So I understand, Richard, that you need some space. I'll give you a couple days. but you know, that's about all I can handle. Will you, you know, get back to me as soon as you can. So that's how people work through these kind of issues. So this is the basic graph again. And so when you want to look at your sign, so for example, if you're a Virgo and opposites attract, so you use your map here and say, here's Virgo. What is exactly opposite Virgo? Pisces. So you're sitting right next to your potential soulmate friend. Now, isn't this a coincidence? They are very good friends, and she's here, in fact, due to her invitation. So, opposites attracted, and my best friend is a Virgo, and I'm a Pisces. So, that's the most fundamental, powerful attraction with friends or potentially with romantic partners. So we'll come back to people's signs here, but
What if you are attracted to like the same sign?
that's possible as well. But on a fundamental level, in terms of magnetism, opposites attract and likes repel.
That's why the marriage didn't work.
But it's a lot more complicated than that, and I'll explain why. Because for some people, their same sign is actually one of the most powerful and positive person for them. So I'm just going to bring back Elizabeth Taylor's chart just to show you here that in addition to your sun sign, your Venus, and your moon, remember I talked about the houses, the 5th house and the 7th house. The 5th house being the house of romance and recreation and arts and children. And it's no coincidence Elizabeth Taylor's sun sign is in the house of media and the arts. She's an actress. It's the house of actors. So, but what establishes these houses is the time of your birth, or what we call your rising sign, when you rise onto the earth. She was born at 8:24 p.m. So that established her rising sign is 8 degrees Libra. And so for everyone, the time you were, the more accurate, the better, but the time you were born establishes this wheel, which then goes into determining, to a certain extent, your ideal mate partner. And especially, you see, if she was a Virgo rising, okay, so in other words, Virgo is on the cusp of this rising sign, and the opposite of Virgo is Pisces, and her sun sign may also be in the 7th house, then other Pisces would be very prominent for her in terms of a partner. So what can determine the potential for your own sign, and even for her, Pisces would work to a certain extent because it would be found in this 5th house of romance, where her own sun sign is. But what we would then need to look at, in addition to your own sign, is where's the position of Venus for that other person, and where's the position of the moon for that other person, and those could be in contrary or positive positions. So it gets more complex than just simply sun sign stuff. So coming back to the basics, that opposites attract. So I mentioned here, your sun signs could be opposites, like these two here. Or your Venus could be opposite. Elizabeth Taylor had Venus in Aries, so the opposite of Aries is Libra. You'll see on that map I had up there. So she might find herself attracted to lots of Libras, or Libras might be attracted to her. Or rising sign. So in other words, as I showed, let's say she was a Virgo rising, and the opposite of that is Pisces on the cusp of her house of marriage. That would bring her own sign into place. So opposites attract. The next factor that goes into contributing just a natural sense of compatibility with another person is same element harmony. Elements are fire, earth, water, and air. Okay. So we could just take your sun sign, for example. Let's take David, for example. David's a Capricorn. So, do you know what element your sign is?
No. I mean, Earth, yeah.
Yeah, it's an earth sign. Okay. So you see here, same element, water, earth, air, or fire. Now we'll go back to so here's Capricorn. Okay. So when you go 4 spaces over, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's your next earth sign, Taurus. Now I have them color coded here, so the green ones are earth signs. There's Virgo. You add 6, if you add 4 spaces to a 6, you get a 10. There's Capricorn. So take any sign, Gemini, go 4 spaces over. Gemini's an air sign. Or let's take Libra since we have an air sign here. And you go 4 spaces over, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, what's naturally compatible with you is an Aquarius. Go 4 more spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, a Gemini. The air signs are communicative type of people who like to evolve their intellect, like to share information, knowledge, etc., experiences. Earth sign people tend to be more pragmatic, business-oriented, geared towards administrative dynamics, organizational experiences, materialistic ambition and attainment in society. And so a Virgo and a Capricorn might get together and talk about their work experience, what they like about the people they work with, or how much money they've made over the years in their business, things like that. And these are generalizations, and they go. You could be a Capricorn, but actually have a bunch of planets in air and be much more of an intellectual who could care less about material things. So
that's what I get.
yeah. So that's why the generalizations don't hold. That's why I was basically a complete skeptic of astrology, being a Pisces. Yet before I went back to college, I owned and was an auto mechanic and managed an auto repair business. That's the last thing you'd ever imagine a Pisces being able to do. Pisces generalizations are ethereal, metaphysical, musical actors, unmaterialistic, etc. But I have the moon in Capricorn, and I have Capricorn rising. So I have a very grounded and practical side to me, scientific. So at any rate, but here we're talking about just some fundamental compatibility generalizations. And so, same element harmony. Now, this applies to not just your sun sign, but your moon sign or your Venus sign. So, he may be a Capricorn, but let's say he has Venus in Sagittarius, which is common for some Capricorns. So, that would imply that he might get along romantically better with another fire sign, like in Aries. So let's say he has Venus in Sagittarius, and then we go over to the next fire sign, Aries, or the next fire sign, Leo. So when we construct an ideal mate profile, we're evaluating the sun sign, the Venus, the moon, and coming up with the possibilities of who another person might have, either sun sign-wise, Venus or Moon, in terms of compatibility. But it's all a function of what is a person's values for what they're looking for. Is the domestic life more important? They could care less about the career of the other person. Is the values for lifestyle more important? In other words, are they looking for someone who's into hiking and recreational and outdoor activities, or could they care less and want someone who's much more of a domestic type of person, who's more into the home, the family, the relatives, cooking, etc. So it's really a function of knowing these facets of our experience and our identity, and then owning what needs or wants you have for your experience with another person. So, we're going to look at now, as I mentioned, I've spent 2 years in Chinatown in San Francisco studying Chinese astrology. And over the past 25 years, when I construct an ideal mate profile for someone or look at some of the fundamental basic compatibility, I have found the most powerful foundation factor for compatibility between two people is their Chinese year of birth. And the sun sign can be almost irrelevant.
That's funny.
Yeah.
We're both born the same year.
Yeah. And so you see here that along with each of the zodiac Western signs, I have the correlative for the Chinese year. Libra correlates with the year of the dog. Scorpio correlates with the year of the boar. Leo correlates with the year of the monkey. Now, so this is how that works. How many people here know your Chinese year of birth?
I do now. I see a picture of it.
Well, no, not because you're a Libra.
Oh,
So,
45.
in other words, it really works the other way around.
Got it, okay.
Your Chinese year, let's say you're born in the year of the dog. That, you might be a Virgo. You might be a Pisces, born in the year of the dog. You know, people
Anytime
born
during that year.
anytime during that year.
Okay.
But a fundamental theme for people born in the year of the dog is their need to cultivate tactfulness, cultural awareness, and an ability to be engaged in society in a proactive or activist manner. Which is why 3 of our most recent presidents, Trump, Clinton, and Bush, are all born in the year of the dog. In the same year, actually. Trump is a Gemini, born in 1946. George W. Bush is a Cancer, born in 1946. And Bill Clinton is a Leo, born in 1946. They're born within 2 months of each other. No coincidence. So, but their Chinese year is more of the dominant theme of them being inclined to be communicators who deal with social, service, public-related issues. So, so here's a quick sensibility. I know every Chinese year in the 20th century. Find your Chinese year. So if you're born in 1954, you're born in the year of the horse. If you're born in 1944, you're a monkey. So can you find your Chinese year? It's pretty straight up. Does everyone see what their Chinese year is? Okay. Now, you also find your Chinese element. So right now we are in the year of the metal rat in Chinese astrology. Right now, 2020 is the year of the metal rat. So there's earth, metal, water, wood, and fire. So if you were born in any decade, okay, in a 0 or 1 year, In other words, if you're born in 1950 or 51, or 1960 or 61, or 1970 or 71, or 1940 and 41, you're a metal whatever. Okay? If you were born in a 2 or 3 year, 1943 or 1944, 1953 or 54, you are a water whatever. If you're born in a 4 or 5 year in the decade, you're a wood whatever. I'm born in 1954. I'm a wood horse. Okay. If you're 6 or 7, you're a fire whatever. And if you're born in an 8 or 9, you're an earth whatever. Okay. So, now we come back to the compatibility. So, Kim,
Yes.
what Chinese year are you born?
Monkey.
You're a monkey. Okay. So again, I will reiterate, you will find a more likely compatibility with someone born in your most favorable Chinese years as a foundation for your compatibility before you even look at your sun sign, your moon, your Venus. So she's born in the year of the monkey. Is anyone else here born in the year of the monkey? Okay, we got one monkey. Are there any bananas left?
No, I ate them all.
There you go. She knows her energy. So now remember same element harmony as part of the positive compatibility. Now for Chinese, same element harmony is very important. So Leo, monkey correlates with Leo. So that implies that a foundation energy of her life, regardless of the fact that she's a Virgo, the foundation of her energy of her life is to evolve playfulness, an animated sense of personal confidence. So in other words, she has a fundamental theme based on her Chinese year, anyone born in that year, of the Leo energy of confidence, leadership, inspiration, creativity, etc. And so her most compatible Chinese years are the year of the rat, which we're in right now. So in fact, from a horoscope point of view, this should be a pretty good year for you. And
Excuse me, how did you know that? How did you know that the month was compatible with the rat?
same element harmony, the principle I said before. Leo, Sagittarius, and Aries are the 3 fire signs. The fire trinity in Chinese astrology are the monkey, the rat, and the dragon, the same as your Western signs, but the creatures instead. Each creature, that's why I have them written here, correlates with a Western sign. I'm born in the year of the horse, okay? Now, most people never guess my sun sign, okay? I'm a Pisces. Pisces are not supposed to be somewhat hyper-intellectual, extroverted communicators. But a Gemini is, and I'm born in the year of the horse. So what summarizes my energy much more accurately is the fact that I'm born in the year of the horse, not that I'm a Pisces. That's why your Chinese year is a more powerful foundation indicator for the degree to which you are compatible with somebody else. So this is just a quick snippet. When I do an ideal mate profile, the entire upper half of that profile is devoted to looking at the graduations of the levels of compatibility with your Chinese year. From very compatible, in her case I would have rat and dragon. And in this case we're just going to look at the least compatible, or even statistically, you have less than a 10% chance of having an ongoing or compatible relationship with your worst Chinese year. And that's mitigated by other factors like their sun sign, their moon, and their Venus. But what is the worst Chinese year or most challenging? It's, in this case, unlike the sun signs, you're opposite. So the opposite Chinese year is the year of the tiger for you. I can't tell you how many divorced couples have come to me, thinking, oh, I'm a Leo and I'm married to an Aries, but we're like loggerheads, yeah. And find out she's a monkey and he's born in the year of the tiger. And their Chinese years summarize a lot of the configurations within their chart, which then lend towards their incompatibility. But don't take my word for it. And I've been experimenting with this for 30 years, and I have never been able to consummate, although I've tried and I've experimented, a relationship with someone born in the year of the rat. So I know, Curtis, you've got to go, right?
Yeah.
What's your Chinese year? We'll give you just a quick one.
It was the rooster.
Okay. So you're born in the year of the rooster. So can anyone tell me what 2 Chinese years, based on the principles I've been talking about, would go with Curtis?
Taurus and Capricorn.
Okay, that's the Western signs. What are the Chinese years?
So snake and ox.
Snake and ox. Okay. So when you meet people, you can kind of sense. Now your most challenging Chinese year is going to be what? What's the opposite?
The rabbit.
That's right. Someone born in the year of the rabbit.
Okay.
And when we go into an explanation for each person, when we do a compatibility, we don't just tell them that, but we explain why. So someone born in the year of the rooster is someone who's here to get grounded through practical services and engage the world and want to evolve personal security and material well-being and enjoy sharing those perspectives. People born in the year of the rabbit are on their way out of the material world. They're interested in exploring metaphysics and higher consciousness and channeling angels from other realms. And it just may not work.
Yeah, I see that.
So now we're going to, so if you got to go, now you've got a basis. Next time, are you married?
No, not
Okay.
currently. No.
All right, well, contact me when you've got a fiance or a prospect, and I'll tell you
Thank you.
whether you should run or not.
Very interesting.
Run like a rabbit.
Oh, so he should take on the qualities that he needs to cultivate.
From the rabbit.
Okay, so Saturday, a Pisces. Okay, but
Curtis.
what Chinese year are you born? Oh, you are a rabbit. Well, he's left. Do you feel safe now?
I'm a man and a rabbit.
Yeah, they can get a little cocky. No, I'm sorry. But, okay, so what would be your most favorable Chinese years based on the rabbit? Now she has a direct correlation, so this gives a double emphasis. She's a Pisces, which in fact correlates with the rabbit, which is not unusual. So what are the other signs, starting in the West, that go with Pisces? And then what Chinese year goes with that Western sign? You remember adding, well, if she doesn't remember, can anyone else figure out what the 2 Chinese years would be?
Cancer and sheep, and Scorpio and boar.
Oh,
Right.
okay. That way. Okay.
Right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The next
Oh, yes.
is Cancer, and that's the year of the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, Scorpio, year of the boar. Okay. So why this is the water trinity. So it could be any, you could be a Leo born in the year of the rabbit. You could be any sign, we say. But what is the predominant theme of your identity evolution? Well, hers is congruent, being rabbit and a Pisces. People born in the water trinity of Chinese years, sheep. You think about the creature. A rabbit is a sensitive prey of many predators. So how many creatures out there are chasing rabbits? It's from dogs, cats to hawks and owls. They're all after rabbits for food. So the rabbit's on the run, and the rabbit needs a refuge, a quiet space to hide. And so people born in the year of the rabbit have a calling to live a more private, contemplative life away from the world and evolve spirituality and higher consciousness. And that's somewhat the case for a Pisces. But if, let's say, a Pisces was born in the year of the snake, they might be somewhat spiritual, but they're inclined to run a dry cleaning business or a landscaping service. Because the year of the snake are people who are here to get grounded in the earth and engage in business and material gain. Yet the Pisces may be very creative in how they evolve that business, you see. But in your case, so people born in the year of the sheep are here to evolve their ability to be maternality, mothering, nurturing. You think about a sheep is, again, an innocuous creature, is gentle and a provider of wool for clothing and meat for food. And we think of the images of going out to pasture and the good shepherd and Jesus being the Lamb of God, so to speak. So people born in the year of the sheep are here to evolve their maternal, mothering qualities, nurturing qualities, etc. And explore psychology and personal growth that relates to people born in the year of the rabbit. And then you have people born in the year of the boar. Now, is anyone here born in the years of the sheep or the boar? Okay.
Three, all sitting next to each other.
Okay, so what Chinese years are you?
4.
Okay.
Sheep. Oh, the rooster.
Oh, okay. So we've been there, right?
Rooster.
So we have boar and rabbit and
Sheep.
sheep. Okay. So I'm already working with you folks here in terms of what we're looking at here. And so you find people born in the year of the sheep who are engaged in the maternal related types of professions, like the hotel and restaurant industry, the hospitality services, psychological personal growth, or psychologists who are marriage, family, and child counselors, nurses, the teaching profession. So whatever is about nurturing and empowering dynamics. And then you have the year of the boar. Now this can be the most intriguing because, see, the year of the boar correlates with Scorpio. And so some Chinese restaurants will call it the year of the pig, but that's not accurate from the spiritual growth point of view. So the boar is a wild pig. The boar is, have you ever seen a boar? Or, on National Geographic or whatever. The boar is an angry pig. And so what does that mean?
That
Nothing to
fits.
do with us.
Okay. So when you're born in the year of the boar, doesn't matter your sign, whether you're an Aries, a Capricorn, or whatever else sun sign you might have. An underlying theme implies that there's a significant karma that you're here to face in this life that might involve a deeper kind of wounding experience than people born in other Chinese years, which implies a more driven passion for discovering what that is and engaging psychological personal growth and healing. And often, when you're born in the year of the boar, it's associated with what we call a father wound. An abandonment issue with your father, or abuse issue with your father, or lack of nurturance and direction, or father not being a constructive role model for your identity development. Sound familiar?
Oh my God.
Yeah, could be,
But at any rate, and also Capricorn is the sign of the father. So when people are Capricorns, it implies often that they are here to evolve a healthier sensibility of what it means to be fathering. And
That, I mean, interestingly enough, and that would be very accurate for me, because that was a huge part of my identity. But my father, who's also a Capricorn, could not be more opposite.
yeah, but is he born in the year of the boar? This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
See, that's why, your sun sign is, tangentially relevant,
Yeah.
but it's the Chinese year.
But it kind of trumps the whole thing.
Right. See, you can have the same father. Let's say you have a brother or sister born in the year of the rooster, or the year of the monkey, and they may have no problem with your father, or their experience with your father may have been fun and positive. So when we look at the children of the same parents, we can see a different experience based on the different Chinese year.
Mm.
So I'm getting confused because I'm a rooster.
Okay.
However, because that dog is next to Libra, which I am,
Don't even think about that.
okay,
Right
that's
now
what I
we're-
wanted you to tell me.
We're
because that's confusing.
looking at the Chinese year.
Yes.
So if you're born in the year of the rooster, you have more thematic issues for your life in general related to Virgo. Your sun sign is irrelevant.
Got it. Okay.
If so, like Donald Trump or Clinton is born in the year of the dog, he has more thematic issues associated with politics and relationships.
Okay.
So this is just one
Okay.
specific
I got it.
focus
Yeah. Okay.
related to your Chinese year.
What year is 1922? Do you know off the
yeah.
top
Yeah,
of your
can you go
head?
back 1 second to that other? Yeah, to that
The
Chinese
the
year.
years of the.
Oh.
Because we're all thinking about like relationships. And
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah.
1922 is the year of the water dog. It's
It's
the year of the dog.
so it's the year of the dog. So would that be like,
Is that your dad?
yeah?
Okay.
So he's a
So we don't have time to get into
No, but I just wanted to see like, yeah.
Yeah, 1922 is the year of the water dog. So it implies that he is here to cultivate sociability and positive communication dynamics and
He
creativity.
failed.
He failed miserably. He did not
Yeah,
accomplish
miserably.
it. He has to
Well,
come back
and
and do
look
it
at
again.
Donald Trump. He's
another
one of
day.
these.
Has to come back again.
So it's what calling is and whether one evolves that.
Yeah, yeah.
The downside for someone born in the year of the dog is someone who is has poor communication skills, can be brash and rude, can be somewhat brooding and isolating. So there's the high side and the low side.
Mhm.
Possibly. So lastly, let's see who we have. So we've looked at the year of the rooster, and the rooster theme is associated with healing and being involved in practical services that can affect the public in a pragmatic, uplifting manner associated with their health or their lifestyle organization. And as well, we have Barb, who's also born in the year of the rooster, right?
Right, we were born exactly 6 months apart, and I'm an Aries and she's a Libra, and that's why we get along so well.
Right.
Mhm.
So they have same Chinese year, and they're opposite
Wow.
in terms of
Yeah,
sun.
you two should be good friends.
So this is now Cherry. Your Chinese year.
Dragon.
Okay, so Cherry is born in the year of the dragon, yet she is a Taurus by sun sign. So someone born in the year of the dragon, if you think about a dragon is a formidable mythological creature. And the dragon is someone that is here to evolve a powerful presence and charisma or energy that can be inspirational or oppressive. So in other words, and the best examples I like to draw on are Bruce Lee, karate champion, and Chuck Norris, both born in the year of the dragon. In fact, one of Bruce Lee's karate movies is called The Dragon. And but the fundamental spiritual issue associated with being born in the year of the dragon is evolving and discerning your unique soul growth mission in this life, and being and cultivating the self-worth and faith to believe in yourself as a unique individual with a path or a message to inspire others. So if you look at Bruce Lee, it's not about him being an incredible karate champion, which he was, or which he had to be, being a Chinese man in a racist country that stereotyped Chinese men as dry clean owners or Chinese restaurant owners and diffident and passive. He broke that stereotype by being a powerful, incredibly charismatic, strong champion of the underdog in his movies, and a powerful example, unique example. That's a dragon. And at a minimum, the dragon can imply that you may come from lifetimes where you've been overly accommodating other people, or you have overly adjusted your sensibility about your identity and who you are according to what other people think about you, or what your family is coaxing you to be, or etc. And you see, the dragon is opposite the dog. See, so I doubt you like Donald Trump.
That's pretty accurate.
See, Donald Trump is just the opposite. He's learning how to be tactful. He's learning how to be honest. He's learning how to be in a positive, cooperative relationship.
He has a learning disability.
He does. And I've done his chart, and I even have a video about him, which shows one of his core karmic issues as being a pathological liar.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, I hope he doesn't send the Secret Service after me. So, anyway,
So a dog I would not line up well with a dog. Someone.
right. So in other words, statistically, it's been seen you have less than a 10% chance of even just being friends with a woman who's born in the middle of the day.
Oh.
You have less than a 10% chance of having and consummating a comfortable relationship with someone born in your opposite Chinese year.
Wow.
So if you're born in the year of the boar, someone born in the year of the snake will be challenging for you, or vice versa. It's okay, you know. It doesn't imply you have to build a prejudice towards certain people. And some of my best friends are born in the year of the rat. They're kind of on the edge of more being acquaintance, not real close friends. But, you know, the point in this, in terms of love and acceptance, is understanding what the energy of these people are. And so, if you're born in the year of the boar, you are someone who is generally going to be inclined to want to engage personal growth, emotional awareness, psychological dynamics, or spirituality and consciousness, which is pretty common to people born in the year of the sheep or the year of the rabbit, let's say. But someone born in the year of the snake, they're much more, they may be a spiritually conscious person, as Russ is, but is much more drawn to using that spiritual consciousness and the healed issues they've already worked through karmically to manifest practical services to people in the material world. Russ is a highly inventive person who creates items that are facilitate healing and other dimensions. So I, someone oriented board can respect that, and you can respect your things, but you just may not have a lot of common life path dynamics. So
Let's change that.
Comes up between us.
So, and as Jesus said, turn the other cheek and love your enemies. Remember, at any rate, the point being that all of this is not meant to evolve a prejudice, but is to just evolve a better understanding of who this person may be and what their life path.
Yeah, actually, it would be more beneficial knowing that, and then you're like,
Right. So.
oh, I get it. You're the snake.
Right.
Enough said.
And
See ya.
I've had my share of married couples who are born in the opposite Chinese years. And they have a certain karma they have to work out related to acceptance, tolerance, and understanding. And yet they work it out and like it, and they find a deeper experience of love through that. So the point being that it's about getting another perspective on the expression of people's energies according to their moon, their Venus, their sun, their Mercury, and even their Chinese year, to see, does that, as we come back to the original statement, am I willing to extend myself for the purpose of nurturing my spiritual growth and that of the other person? And do they complement me? And do I complement them enough for us to join our paths and experience a greater sense of love from the universe?
That is my favorite quote, by the way. That's I've used that a lot. Love that book. That's like my #1 book I've ever read.
Yeah.
Road Less Traveled.
So, thank everyone for being here. I want to
Thank
entertain
you.
questions. I'm just going to close this up here.
Thank you.